All right, well, I'd like to welcome everybody to our final in our series on attracting and retaining talent with Chris Czarnik. Chris is a national career search and talent acquisition expert with 20 years of experience. I'm not going to go too much in because if you've been on this, you've heard me introduce him a couple different times. A couple things I want to remind you of. I'll put the link for the previous recordings in the chat so that you have access to that. Feel free to share that around. I was able to get some of you your books this week. Some of you have not gotten them yet. I'm waiting on an order from a local bookstore to get those out. So we will have about 15 minutes at least at the end of this where you can ask specific questions. So if you're thinking of them, you can type them in when you think of them. And when we get there, I'll read them aloud, or we'll let you come off mute and you can ask the questions directly. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Chris. And thanks.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's morning in Montana. It is now just recently afternoon where I am in Appleton, Wisconsin. I'm so grateful that you took time out of your week to join us today. I know as business owners or presidents or people who run organizations, time is the most valuable commodity that you have. And so I'm very grateful that you took the time to be with us today. So today, what I want to do is I want to give a really quick overview of everything that we've covered. But I want to start with a couple of big overwhelming ideas or overarching ideas, if you will. So number one, in 3 hours, I cannot give you 20 years of hiring, attraction, retaining, and development work. I can't do that. My goal was to teach you that there's another way, and Great Falls has been good enough to buy a copy of the book for each of you. And the book, Winning the War for Talent, is absolutely a technical manual. I don't deal in theory. Like, it literally will tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, how to determine whether it's working for you, and how to adjust it if it's not working for you. And I'll also tell you that I hope that this does not end the relationship with Great Falls. When we start traveling again, my intention is head out to a number of places on the West Coast. And but more importantly, please know that it's a genuine offer. Please contact me. If you have questions, don't worry about what any of the, like I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm at home. So I'm very happy for you to send me an email or give me a phone call, get the information from Nathan, and I'd be happy to talk you through it once you get through the book and you have questions on how to implement it. The second overarching idea is I want you to know that the process that I teach, it doesn't matter whether you're a $500 million company or a startup with $150,000 in sales, doesn't make any difference. The process that I teach doesn't matter whether you're hiring a secretary, a CFO, a president, or somebody to work on your production line. As I say all the time, whether you're hiring a ditch digger or a circus clown or an astronaut or a brain surgeon, the process is always exactly the same. The inputs will be different and your outcomes will be different, but the process is always the same. And the last thing is we've got really wonderful feedback from you. I'm really grateful that this information has been helpful to you. But I also want to let you know, if you're a smaller organization, the amount of time to create the persona and use LinkedIn to find your next employee, whether it's a supervisor, whether it's an administrative assistant, a secretary, somebody to sweep the floor or run the whole organization, takes about an hour. I mean, we're not talking about days. We're not talking about weeks. We're talking about the persona. If you talk with the people inside your organization, do the work, create the persona, takes maybe an hour, 2 at the absolute tops. And then it's a matter of creating advertising and looking on LinkedIn to find people who fit that persona that you created. So don't be intimidated by it. I do this for hundreds and hundreds of companies around the country. And the overwhelming experience is that if it's that different, it must be hard. But I'm here to tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. And both myself and Great Falls and Nathan are here to help you through that process. So let's go through what we talked about in the first couple of weeks. We talked about the fact that in the next 10 years, the #1 challenge for American business will be the inability to recruit, engage, or retain talent in their organization. It's not my opinion, it's a mathematical certainty. We talked about why it's a mathematical certainty that we have been pulling people from the largest generation in the history of our country, but that the generation after them has 9.5 million less people. And so I lovingly say that the sucking sound you hear when you post a job ad is 65.9 million people trying to fill the roles that used to be filled by 75.4 million people. And not only that, we also know that for the last 11 years, fully 10% less mindsets have changed. 10% less people have chosen to go to work full-time or at least more than half-time. And so it is a mathematical certainty that in order for you to win the war for talent, somebody else has to lose. Our job is just to give you a 3-year head start on everybody else. We talked about that if you don't do something, if you need it bad, you'll get it bad. You might be considering and talking to people right now that you wouldn't have considered 5 years ago. And I want to tell you a really super quick story. I was working with a client in Chicago this last weekend. I'm in Wisconsin, so I just drove south like 4 hours to work with them. On the way down, I stopped counting at 100 now hiring signs. Now that tells you two things. Number one, at least in our area, the staffing shortage is real. The talent shortage is real because there were 100 now hiring signs just on the main roads going from Appleton, Wisconsin to Chicago, Illinois. But the second thing is that now hiring signs don't work, right? So what worked 30 years ago when people needed your job more than you needed them, because there were always more people, that doesn't work anymore. That whole, we open the door and let you come in and hire us. What worked for you 30 years ago because of the worker shortage, because of the technology that allows them to search 150 jobs an hour, and because of the mindset of both Generation X and millennials, that losing their job is not scary. Job search is just an interesting problem to be solved. And so we need to do something different. So we talked about the cost of not doing it right. We talked about the 3 concepts: external recruiting, internal recruiting, and engaging and developing talent in your organization. The concept that we talked about is there's 2 ways to go fishing. You can either drag the lake with a net, or you can create a model of exactly what trout will go after and use that as a lure. And we also talked about the fact that what I'm teaching you is not new. You don't have to believe me because you've never met me, but the concepts that I'm talking with you about are done by billion-dollar companies who sell you products, everything from cheese to chalupas to shirts to cars. And so if it works for them, then I think it will work for us as well. We asked about the fact that whether people that you would love to have apply for your jobs, are they unwilling or unable to apply for your jobs? Are they unable because they didn't see your job ad, they don't know your company exists, or they have some false preconceived notion about your organization? Or are they unwilling because they know everything about your company and have made a value decision not to come? And what we said is that only 10% of people, in my work with 3,000 job seekers over the last 20 years, one-on-one, tens of thousands, of course, in seminar format, that only 10% of people have looked at your job, have all the information they need, know your pay, your benefits, your culture, your development, all the opportunities, and are making a value decision not to come. 70% of the people you wish you were applying for your jobs have never heard of your company or your industry, don't know you exist. And 20% of the people who are not coming to apply for your job have some false preconceived notion about your industry or your organization that we can use to turn into attention-getting advertising. We also talked about the fact that if you think about the way we sell anything, we would never write the same love letter to everyone we were trying to date. And you probably have 3 or 4 different brochures for every product that you sell, because the product, while the product or service is the same, who you're selling it to is different. And so the language you use in your organization to speak to them is different depending on who you're focused on. And so we focused on each of the words that the 4 generations you're hiring into need to be part of your advertising because it speaks to them. Next, we had a really important slide, and that is that, again, whether it's an administrative assistant or a CFO, building the persona of who the perfect person that you hope applies for your job is the number one thing you can do. And if you were to hire a recruiter and pay them 30% of that person's first year wages, what I'm teaching you is exactly what that recruiter does. They build this persona and then they go looking for them on LinkedIn. So again, 94% of all recruiters, first stop last year was LinkedIn to find that person. They're going to charge you $20,000 or $30,000 to find, and you can absolutely do this on yourself or by yourself. Then we showed kind of a really interesting model here, and that is for your employment opportunity, before you create any advertising, before you create a model of who you hope to speak to, what we want to do is we want to ask and answer 5 questions, and we want to ask and answer them of our current employees. Again, don't do this in theory. Don't do this like you're guessing what will speak to people. You have had success getting people who were not employees of your company to become employees of your company. You did it successfully, but very often what we do is we don't examine how they became employees, what spoke to them, what situation were they in. So go ask these 5 questions of your newest employees, and then that will help you build a model. Who are we hoping applies for this job? Who are we selling to, and what is their current situation? What problem does coming to work for us solve? What causes that problem to occur so that we can actually anticipate when somebody is going to be in the mindset and in the life situation where our job is a great answer? How does their life get easier or better coming to work for you? And by the way, again, stay completely away from money and benefits, because trying to win the war for talent is a never-ending upward spiral that unless you have the deepest pockets around, you don't want to get into this battle. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, what emotion does coming to work for you create for your current employees? Go ask them, why did you come here and why do you stay? And then you'll be able to speak to the people that you want to be here to find more employees just like the great employees that you have. We talked about creating emotional anchors, which was making sure that you promoted benefits of coming to work for you that affected in a positive way directly the spouse, significant other, and or the family of the person who's your current employee or you are trying to bring in. So whether you work 4 days a week and that person wants 3-day weekends, we would promote that. If it's a reduced commute, we would do that. If you can work from home 1 day a week, that's totally fine. If we have 1 week more vacation than everybody else, we would promote that, because that benefit that you already provide costs you $0 more to provide. And all we want to do is find the people that benefit speaks to. We're not trying to sell our job and our benefits to everybody out there. That would be dragging a net through the lake. We're trying to figure out exactly who values our company, our culture, our benefits, the way that it would work for us, so that they want to come not to just any new job, but to our new job. We also talked about that billion-dollar companies do this thing to sell us everything. They create a tagline by identifying common misconceptions about your company or your industry, and then they create short advertising that draws attention to that advertising. So I asked initially for each of you to come up with 1 or 2 commonly held but false preconceived notions about your company or your industry. And then we talked about how to create a tagline that allowed us to take that idea and turn it on its head. Take that whole idea. Remember what I told you? For the roofing companies, we all think that they're on dangerous slanted roofs. And my roofing companies say, you don't want to work on slanted roofs. Good, we don't either. Another example was no experience preferred, if it's appropriate, by the way. Doesn't work for every job. If I'm hiring a brain surgeon or an astronaut, they certainly have to have some experience. But the fact is, you have lots of expertise in your organization. I say this all the time, we want to hire good people and teach them how to be good employees. So this whole idea if experience is important, you've been beating that. We collectively as a hiring community have been beating that into people's heads and telling them, don't apply if you don't have experience and don't have every one of our qualifications. And they listened, they didn't apply. And now we're trying to bring them back into the fold and say, no, we'd love to teach you our way of doing everything. So we created a tagline by taking one of those false preconceived notions, turning a phrase into 3 to 5 words, creating an oxymoron. And the only goal of advertising, really the big takeaway here, is that you're making a huge mistake in your advertising, telling everybody about all your pay, all your benefits, and all your opportunities, because you're giving them an opportunity to evaluate you against all the other 150 jobs that are posted on that board, they all look the same. And then they start evaluating you just on pay or just on benefits, even though your culture might be wildly better or your opportunities might be wildly better. My job seekers will never get to that point because you gave them an opportunity to compare them to everybody else. The goal of advertising, remember this, the goal of advertising for applicants is not to answer their questions, it's to get them to ask questions that they can only answer by calling you or stopping in, all right? So again, no experience preferred. We had people calling us saying, well, what do you mean? I literally have no experience. Do you really want to talk to me? Yes, absolutely. We'd love to talk to you. Now, we don't hire every one of them. We still have an interview process and a screening process, but it gets more people to come and ask us questions about our organization. But no experience preferred also got very experienced people to call my employers and say, why do you want no experience? I have lots of experience. Why don't you want to talk to me? And it got them to call us so we could say to them, we'd love to talk to you. Why don't you come on in? Now, a really quick story, and I'll ask Nathan to jump in here with kind of the punchline of this whole story. As I was to demonstrate this process done really, really well, I was driving down to Chicago, and as you can imagine, I drove past hundreds and hundreds of billboards. They all start looking the same. You stop paying attention to them. But one billboard right in the middle of on 294 in Chicago had like a black sign, and across it, kind of in handwriting that looked like angry handwriting, it had the phrase, "I hate Steven Singer." And to learn more, go to ihatestevensinger.com. And of course, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody's broke somebody's heart. There's, people broke a relationship. There's a man or a woman who created a whole website that is just going to flame this other person. And of course, because we're all curious people, I went on the website and I asked Nathan to do the same. Nathan, what did you find?
It's a jewelry store. And I kind of couldn't believe it. As soon as I'm like, almost asked Chris, is this a jewelry store?
And so the fact is, the goal is to get people to look different enough that people come to take a look at us, because we're starting to look, if we just do write ads like everyone else does, we look like another container of vanilla ice cream along all the other vanilla ice cream in the grocery store. So again, I wouldn't go that far with your advertising. That's a little bit far. That's really off the deep end. But again, all you have to do is find one or two commonly held but false preconceived notions about your organization, and then create a 3 to 5 word tagline that gets people to say, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. What do you mean by that? Our advertising is not about answering questions. It's about creating them. We also talked a lot about that you have perfectly good people in your organization that love your organization, but they're not bringing anybody into your organization, which is super confusing. And we talked about the fact that if you're trying to get them to bring people in your organization with money, you're making the mistake that many, many organizations are making by trying to overcome an emotional risk with a financial incentive. And so we created an idea here that we would replace, my clients replace all financial incentives for successful referrals with a week off with pay. They get immediate gratification. The day that person gets hired in our organization, they are eligible for that week of vacation, even though we still get to tell them when they can take it. They can't take it immediately because we still have to run the business. So not only do we have time off with pay, but then we offer them travel cash to share pictures with us. And we talked about creating a full glossy brochure with our referral for vacation program written out on it, not an email, but a physical flyer that had pictures of people taking this vacation. And we mailed it to the family of every one of those employees so that the family could see what opportunities in front of us. We double our opportunities because it's not only the network of the employee that we can dip into for referrals, but also the network of the significant other who also has a clear motivation to help that move along because it serves the family well and creates what I refer to as an emotional anchor. The last thing we talked about, and I hope you've really thought about this week, is that if you want to win the war for talent for salaried employees only, right? There's other ways to do it for hourly employees, but for salaried employees only, I believe that vacation is a zero cost benefit. And if it is a zero cost benefit, if you don't bring somebody else in to fill their role while they're on vacation, if they just do the work before they leave or after they come back, or the department pulls together, if it's really a free benefit, like their wages don't change, their benefits don't change, whether they have 2 or 3 weeks vacation, why wouldn't you want to win the war for talent with a free benefit like vacation? Because people only leave organizations for more money if everything else, including vacation, is the same. And if you have 1 week of vacation more than everybody else in your industry, people will not leave for more money, but less vacation. All right, so that was a quick overview. I hope it was kind of quick. And so what I've got here then is I want to talk about the third part of this. And that is, we've talked about recruiting people into your organization. We've talked about how to get people engaged in bringing people into your organization. But the last thing we have to do is we have to talk about how do we not lose talent once we get it inside the organization. Retention of employees is equally as important, because if you bring one great person into your organization, but because you're not working with and developing current employees, you lose one person out the hole in the bottom of the bucket, you haven't made any progress. And so what I want to do today is I want to lay out for you a zero cost, like, again, doesn't matter whether you have 2 employees or 2,000 employees, doesn't make any difference at all. This model absolutely works. And as I say, not much I do is magic, but for the companies I do work with, this is the one that they say seems like magic to them. What do we know for sure? We know for sure that the number one reason people leave an organization is a poor working relationship with their direct supervisor or manager. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. I want you to think about when you changed jobs the last time, or maybe whatever it was that made you start your own company or your own business. My guess is one of 2 things was true. Either you had a negative relationship with your direct supervisor, or you had reached a certain level of development and movement and learning in the organization, and you didn't think you could learn anything more. And so let's deal with the first one first. My first piece of advice here is be very, very careful of promoting people with high levels of technical skill into positions where they manage people. We very often, especially in smaller organizations, we want to reward our long-term technically gifted employees by making them a supervisor or a manager, to give them a title. But I'm here to tell you that the skill sets between being technically good at the wiring patterns for cell phone towers or setting up the ladder logic in servo drives is very different than the ability to engage, educate, train, and motivate people. And so if you have somebody in your organization that's technically really good and you want to reward them, give them $1, right? Give them $1 an hour, give them a cookie, give them a gold star, give them a new title, do it. But be very, very careful before you promote technical people into roles of their managing people. If you have already done that and you're having a supervisor who is struggling with managing people, the model I'm about to show you works really, really well, not only for creating a parking lot for talent inside your organization, but developing supervisors who might be struggling for this. But you also need to teach your supervisors, what does it look like and sound like when people are about to leave? Like when people leave and they give you their notice, they're gone, right? They've been looking for a job. My job seekers have told me on average, they start thinking about leaving the company 6 months before they actually leave. And we have 60 days after they decide that they're looking somewhere else to try and save them. Because once some other company is telling them how great they are and how they think they can turn stones gold and water into wine, it's very hard to bring them back. So I'm going to give you 4 patterns, 4 very clear patterns to teach your managers and supervisors to look for that are indicators that I've learned from my job seekers, indications they were trying to, without saying it, they were trying to give indications to their manager or their company that they were unhappy. And if we look for these patterns, we can interact with these unhappy employees early on and try and bring them back into the fold. So the 4 patterns are these. So number 1, the most obvious one is short-term time off during the middle of the week. So people take Mondays off, they take Fridays off. It happens, right? But if somebody takes 2 or 3 times a week, they need 2 hours in the afternoon, and it's on very short notice, right? They come in Wednesday morning and say, hey, I'm really sorry, but I've got to be gone from 1 to 3 this afternoon. That's an indicator. Very rarely does somebody have 3 emergency root canals in 1 month. And if you think about when you interview people, it's usually during the week and not on a Monday or a Friday, and it's in the afternoon. So if people start asking 2 or 3 times on very short notice to have a couple hours off in the afternoon, it's time to check in with them and see if they're unhappy, because they may well be talking with somebody else out there or even interviewing with somebody else out there. Number 2, they stop disagreeing with you. You have hired valuable employees. You love them because as a manager, as an owner, as a supervisor, you have employees that when you're about to roll out an idea or a concept, you run it past your employees and they say, well, wait a second, Chris. Hang on, I think there might be a better way to do this. Like, you run it past them to make sure you're not about to make some big mistake. And they give you advice and they give you guidance and they give you feedback, and you really value their input. When those employees start just saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, whatever you want, and they stop giving critical feedback to their supervisor or manager, that is a really sure sign that they are starting to emotionally check out of the organization. What that means is that the job seeker is trying to say, without flying a flag, is, I used to think that you valued my opinion, but it's clear that you don't anymore. And so I'm just going to say yes, sir, whatever, and not give you any critical feedback about ideas that you're about to bring to the forefront. So number 2 is those valuable employees, they stop disagreeing with you or giving you professional but critical guidance about the way that you are doing things. Number 3, they start turning down or deflecting development opportunities or difficult projects. You hired great people because they wanted to grow, because they wanted to take on difficult tasks, and they wanted to really grow their own abilities and take on really difficult problems inside your organization. But when employees who you have given opportunities for, and they've always taken them, they've always said, I'd love to go to that seminar, or I'd love to work with this new customer, I'd love to work on this new piece of equipment or this new machine or learn this new process. When those employees say, you know what, my plate's pretty full, I think that'd be a better fit for Luke. Or I think Sarah probably has a better background for that. Why don't you go talk to them? What those 3,000 job seekers have told me, well, not all of them, but a large number of them, is when people do that, what they're trying to do is they're trying to distance themselves from the organization, because they know they're not going to be around to finish that training or be working on that difficult project or working on with that new client. So when employees who have typically really been anxious for development opportunities, when they start saying, you know what, I don't think so, maybe somebody else would be a better fit, it's time to check in with them. And the last one, the 4th one, is that they start systematically excusing themselves from non-business related get-togethers. It's as simple as they stop playing fantasy football inside the office. They stop coming to family or to business outings. If you guys all go out on Thursdays for a beer and a burger, they just the last 2 or 3 weeks, every single time there was an excuse to not be there, even though they used to do it all the time. When they start excusing themselves from non-business related get-togethers, non-official function get-togethers, what they're doing is they're distancing themselves emotionally from the people, because leaving a job is a really emotional thing. And so what you want to do is, if you teach your managers starting today, teach them for their own growth, that there are 4 really clear patterns that people show you when they're unhappy. And what my job seekers have said is, we wanted somebody to check in with us. We wanted to say how unhappy we were, but we didn't quite know how to do it. We didn't want to seem ungrateful. But they were so ungrateful, they started to look for another job rather than go to their boss or their manager and tell them that something was wrong. So managers should look for these signs in people, and if they see them, it's time for them to check in and see if everything's okay. The second thing I've learned is that if the number 1 reason people leave an organization, according to SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Managers, is a negative relationship with their direct supervisor, the number 2 reason people leave is a lack of engagement. people leave because they don't see a path for themselves in your company. And if I'm known for any saying around the country, it's this one: when people stop learning, they start leaving. Didn't you? Again, go back to when you last left one organization to go to work for another. My guess is the reason you did that is because you didn't think that there was any learning left for you or any challenge left for you. You felt like you had gotten to the point where you were kind of just pulling the plow. You were coming into work, you did a fine job, you got your check every 2 weeks and they paid your health insurance, but you personally weren't growing at all. You can't do all this work to hire dedicated, driven people and then just ask them to come in and pull the plow. You want driven people, we have to challenge them on an ongoing basis. And this model I'm about to show you is designed to do exactly that. We're going to implement this. We're going to offer this to employees at the beginning of their third year of employment. Now, why are we doing it in the third year of employment? Two things. Number one, we have 15 years now of millennials in the workforce. They are no longer mysterious 22-year-olds. And we know that millennials change companies, not jobs. They change companies every 3.4 years. And that should scare the living daylights out of any organization that hires them in, trains them just to watch them walk out the door 3 years later. So the easiest thing that I want you to do with your supervisors and managers, and this is a cultural shift in your organization. Millennials are, remember what I told you when we were on last week? Millennials want to solve problems creatively. They want freedom, but it's the freedom to solve problems creatively, which means they are desperate and thirsty for knowledge and information. So at the very top of the slide, you'll see, if you want to make a fundamental culture change in your organization, just tell every one of your supervisors and managers and leadership employees from today on, stop answering employees' questions with what to do, but answer them with why they should do that thing. Of course, you want to tell them what to do, but then the next thing is, here's why to do it. Here's why it's so important you do it. Here's how it affects the next part of the organization. Here's how we learned to do it this way. Here's the history of how we got there. It takes another 2 minutes. But what we know for sure, especially for the millennials, is that they want to know why. They're on YouTube asking why. They want to know what, how toilet paper is made. They want to know how to replace the filter in their refrigerator or their freezer. They are spending tons of time just adapting information. And because information is so plentiful and moving towards free, why is much more important to them in terms of engagement than what. The other reason we're going to start this program in our third year is because think about your own jobs in the past. In year one, you became comfortable with the job. You became comfortable with the duties and the tasks and the responsibilities and the authority of the level. You became functional in the job. In your second year, you were good at your job and you wanted to start to understand how your work affected other people in the organization. How did your work create a positive impact on your organization or your customers or your vendors, or how did it give you a competitive advantage? You wanted to know why you were doing this thing, so you wanted to talk to the people in the next department that were the direct end results of your work, or were your what we call internal customers. So in year one, you became comfortable with the job. In year two, you became comfortable with the company and your role in it. And in year three, and again, we have 15 years of evidence that for millennials, it's year three when they start going somewhere else. If nothing happens between the end of year two and the beginning of year three, then they start looking. Because in year three, they start looking for growth or change. Well, employees grow by understanding. And that's why this very simple thing for every employee of answering every question with not only what, but why will keep employees there. And we know also that engaged employees stay. Didn't you? I mean, again, I'm not asking you to believe anything I'm saying out of the blue. I'm asking you to take a look at your own experiences in your life. When you felt like you were part of the solution, you stayed. When you thought that your opinion was valued, you stayed. And as soon as those things weren't true, you started feeling like you'd go find some place that you were. So what's the model? Well, number one, I want to let you know that this model, the subject matter expert model, which is the name of it, the subject matter expert model, and sometimes I call it internal career mapping. No, so you can either call it the subject matter expert model or internal career mapping. And internal career mapping means that people have the responsibility of creating their own knowledge growth and their own path in the organization. So what I want you to do right now, if you would please, I'd love you to think about 2 people in your organization that you currently have. They have been outstanding employees. This model I'm about to teach you is not for every employee. It's an earned right. It's an aspirational thing for employees who go above and beyond and are great. This is not for every employee, because if they just do their job and they do their job well, the pay and benefits are what they've earned. But it's for those people that you believe are the future of the company. And they have shown it from the day they walked in the door. So what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to write down 2 names really quickly. I won't ask you what they are, but of 2 employees that if these 2 employees left your company tomorrow, it would be really painful. And the reason this is important is most smaller organizations don't have enough jobs to promote people. Even though the people are ready to be promoted, you don't have any place to promote them to. Their boss isn't going anywhere, and the organization is really flat. So we want to recognize them, but we don't have a place to promote them to. And what we're talking about here, for these 2 employees whose names you're writing down, which 2 employees are we going to put in what I refer to as the parking lot for talent? So I'll give you just 30 seconds. Think about 2 employees who have absolutely earned this opportunity and this right. And it would be super painful for you if they left your organization. Just another 15 seconds or so. This is an important one. I don't normally do this, but this one's really important, because I want to let you know the day that's hard is the day this valued employee out of the blue walks in and gives their notice. People don't tell you they're unhappy. I'm here to people don't tell you. And it's those people, if they told you, you would do 100 things to make them happy because they're important, but they won't tell you. So we need to go to them. All right. Do you have those 2 names written down? I hope so, because here's what we're going to do with them. We're going to create a subject matter expert model, or sometimes referred to as internal career mapping. And here's how it works. The first step is to take the leadership of your organization and for you guys to sit down and identify the 15 topics that are most critical to your company's success. The 15 topics of if you had expertise in these topics, some of them people focused, some of them technically focused, some of them process focused, some of them marketing focused, whatever. But the leadership sits down, and it's a really good team building opportunity as well. You sit down and you decide, you write down what 15 things your organization has to get much better at in terms of process. Now, if you want clues about this, let me tell you how you do this. The first thing you do is you ask all of your managers or the manager on the floor to just start copying down the problems that come up every week. Just have them have a legal pad next to their computer. And every time a problem comes up over and over and over again, just have them write it down. And this list will pretty much write itself in a month. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify 15 topics that if our organization was much, much better at, if we became the subject matter experts in it, if we knew as much as the best organizations in the country on it, then it would give us a specific strategic advantage in the marketplace. Half of these topics are going to be people focused. They're going to be culture focused. They're going to be, I hate to use the term soft skills because there's nothing soft about them. It's the reason people leave is very rarely technical. It's almost always relationships between themselves, coworkers, customers, vendors, or their direct manager. So what would some of those topics possibly be that you could identify that it would be really valuable to have a subject matter expert on in these soft skill areas? Well, one of them, analytical problem solving. We all think we're good problem solvers. I'm here to tell you there's an entirely different level. I went through analytical problem solving training with Kepner Trago in 1993, absolutely life-changing. And a good part of every book that I write, this Winning the War for Talent being the third one, comes from what I learned in analytical problem solving. You might want to be good at win-win bargaining. You might want to say that one of the problems that keeps coming up is we argue with our customers and we can't come to resolution or win-win solutions. Active listening. Maybe you always have miscommunications that end up in conflict. Group facilitation. Maybe our meetings happen over and over again, but we don't get anything done. Or there are lots of other ones. So it could be, active communication. It could be root cause analysis. It could be lean thinking. But there's just dozens of these that you can search on the internet. And by the way, we're going to do this all with free resources that are currently available on the internet. So the first 7 and 8 are going to be people-focused topics that will make your culture better, communication better, and the way information flows and people relate to each other inside your organization better. The last 7 or 8, though, are going to be highly technical things specific to your industry. We call these terms industry-specific terminology. You have a certain language that you use in your industry that everybody in your industry knows exactly what these words and phrases mean, but the vast majority of the world doesn't have a clue what they mean because they've never been in your industry. Industry-specific terms are terms that only people in our industry use, and they usually identify areas of expertise that make us a company that people in that industry want to work with. And so what I want you to do is I want you to make a list, again, of the 7 or 8 technical skills. Now, this is very specific to your industry. This is, if you're a wiring company, it would be expertise in wiring. If you're a company that makes widgets, it might be machine maintenance. If you're in a maintenance organization, it might be where you measure the movements and bearings so you can anticipate when they're going to fail. Just think about those things that make you crazy, the problems that are technical problems that come up and make you crazy over and over and over again. And that's the value of writing down these things during a month or two to identify which things are important. So the first thing to do is we create a list of 15 topics that the leadership believes that if we knew more about these, our company would be better. Then in the 3rd year of employment, we're going to offer outstanding employees. Again, not every employee. This is an aspirational thing. This is a role of honor in an organization. It's something when somebody else gets it, average employees say, well, how do I get that? And we can explain to them how to go above and beyond and be a really great employee and earn this right. We're going to bring them in and say, listen, we'd like to give you the opportunity. We see you. We recognize you as somebody that could very well be part of our company long-term, might even be part of a leadership structure. We want to let you know that we see you and give you an opportunity to become a subject matter expert. You put this list of 15 topics in front of them and they choose, give them a day or two, don't give them 5 minutes, give them a day or two. They choose one of the 15 topics that they want to become a subject matter expert on. Now, why don't we assign these? We don't assign them because we want somebody who already thinks that this topic is really important to them, because we're going to give them 2 hours a week to study it on company time. But if you do this right, the average subject matter expert that I've trained spends 4.2 hours a week studying it on their own time. I mean, just imagine if it's already important to them, if they already like it and believe in it, if they already is part of their life, you won't have to twist their arm at all to do this research. It's already who they are, how they function, and important to them. They might be looking at these topics on Google and YouTube already. We're going to give them 2 hours a week during work hours and whatever time they want outside of work. But we're going to ask them to learn everything they possibly can about this topic using just the resources on the internet, Google, YouTube, and places like the Khan Academy. Now, we couldn't have done this 15 years ago, because 15 years ago, you would have had to bring me in and teach them to be a subject matter expert or send them for thousands of dollars to a week in San Diego or whatever to have this training. But the fact is, we are living in an environment today where information is moving towards free. You can find virtually anything you want if you just Google it or do the next search engine, YouTube. And by the way, YouTube is the #2 search engine in the world. Google's #1, but YouTube searching for videos or information on a topic is the #2 international search model out there. But then you're also going to introduce them to places like the Khan Academy. And if you're not familiar with the Khan Academy, K-A-H-N, the Khan Academy was created by a billionaire out in California who was frustrated that information wasn't available to everybody. And so he created this website where all this information is free to anybody at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And on there, you will find full college courses in hundreds and hundreds of topics. Every one of them I've listed here: analytical problem solving, win-win bargaining, active listening, group facilitation, and on and on and on. There are full videos, full PowerPoints, full classes, like classes that were taped at Stanford and USC and Penn State and Harvard that are now available to anybody on the internet. So we're going to let that person become a subject matter expert by learning everything they can about it for 6 months. Well, then how do we know that they actually became a subject matter expert? Well, Stephen Covey, who is the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, my personal guru, God rest his soul, that what we know is that he taught us that the only way for somebody, if you want somebody to learn any topic at its deepest level, have them prepare to teach it to someone else. Let me say it again, not my idea, it's Stephen Covey's. If you want anyone to learn any topic at its deepest level, have them learn it as if they were preparing it to teach it to someone else. And so after 6 months of letting them study this and becoming a subject matter expert, we're going to confirm that they're actually a subject matter expert by allowing them to teach their topic to their direct supervisor or manager at a very deep level. We're going to have them turn their direct supervisor or manager into a subject matter expert on that topic by teaching it at a very deep level. Imagine, by the way, the positive conversations that will start happening between this employee and the supervisor that have nothing to do with ready dates or yields or losses or missed shipment dates. It starts creating community. And when somebody becomes a teacher, they become very deeply involved, not only in the topic, but giving away that information to other people. Once that supervisor or manager agrees that they are now a subject matter expert, then we're going to give them something, right? We're going to give them $1 an hour. We're going to give them a cookie. We're going to give them a gold star. But mostly what we're going to do is we're going to give them a title: analytical problem solving subject matter expert. It's going to be on their door. It's going to be on their business cards. It might even be on their uniform if they have one. We want this to be very publicly an aspirational role in the organization. We want people to be proud of it. We want people to want to get to that level. And so what we do is, the only way this model doesn't work, by the way, is if you train that person, let them teach their supervisor, and then never use their skills. I've only had this fail in one place, and it didn't fail. We just had to recalibrate it. But you don't want to give somebody a title of subject matter expert and then never pull them in to a difficult project and ask for their advice as an expert or a subject matter expert. So what we're going to do at the very least, I mean, we'll definitely, if we have a problem in analytical problem solving, we're going to pull them off their job and bring them into that meeting. We're going to let them feel really good about the fact they're a subject matter expert, that we need them. So they go home and tell their spouse or significant other or their family how important they were to the goals of the organization that day. And then what we're going to do is, over a year, we're going to do a series of lunch and learns. So that subject matter expert will teach their topic just at a very high level, right? Not deep, but a very high level, maybe an hour's worth of training to everybody in the organization. What happens? Well, first of all, if you can play this out in your mind a little bit, you'll see that your supervisors and managers over a period of time become subject matter experts themselves on the 15 topics most critical to your organization. But they didn't have to do any work to get it. It didn't cost any money to get it. It was no work for HR. And the employee felt incredibly engaged. And so not only do people have to earn this right, but making them a subject matter expert is a none too subtle message to them, is that you are here for the future. We see you. You're on our radar screen. And we want you to be part of the organization, or maybe even a leader in the organization going forward. That's how you create a parking lot for talent that helps the organization create common language. So we get rid of communication issues, common topics, common process to work through issues, and actually grow the whole organization's knowledge base on the 15 topics most important to the organization. So that's it, guys. I know I went a little bit long. I'll turn it back over to Nathan, but happy to, hope that made sense to you, but happy to spend the next 10 minutes or so answering any questions that you have on anything that we covered over these 3 weeks.
Yeah, so feel free to unmute yourself if you want, and speak up if you are less comfortable with that and would rather type in your question. I'm happy to answer it, but we'll kind of open the floor right now.
Be not afraid. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Bueller?
All right, so Carrie asked, what if someone wants to be a common knowledge expert after working for only 6 months?
Yeah, so you want, I'm a process guy, and we want to be in one place with one process. And so that's why you start offering to them at the beginning of their 3rd year. Because after 6 months, if they're saying, if you don't promote me, if you don't do something for me, I'm going to leave, you don't want that employee around. I mean, they have to, I say all the time that employees have to have skin in the game, just like employers have to have skin in the game. So you can explain the subject matter expert to them after 6 months. You can tell them what are the traits of an employee that will allow them to be offered the subject matter expert thing. But again, one of the things that we have not taught our millennial people, and don't laugh at millennials, by the way, especially if you're a baby boomer, because we're the ones who raised them, or Generation X as well. But we haven't taught them patience. We haven't taught them hard work. We haven't taught them what it's like to fail and recover from it. And that's a real part of life. And so if they want to leave after 6 months because they don't get that opportunity, good luck to you. Go with God. But I have 2.5 years now and hundreds of companies who have done this kind of work, and the model really works.
Great. Anyone else with questions or? So
there we go.
Yeah, another question. What if someone doesn't want to be a common knowledge expert their 3rd year?
Yeah, so it's not maybe I've said it wrong. It's not common now. It's a subject matter expert, and the reason I use that is because subject matter expert is a term that's used nationwide, and people actually use it once they become a subject matter expert on resumes and cover letters, and it's a thing of pride. So my apologies if I said it wrong. If somebody doesn't want to do that, that's fine. Like we don't fire them, we don't let them go, but it's a really clear indicator that they're not part of the leadership going forward. We may have seen them as the person we want to be the next supervisor or manager or sales professional or whatever, but if they turn this down, that's fine. If they just want to, come in and work and do their work, that's totally fine. No pressure, no nothing. But it does give you an indication of their level of commitment to the organization and their level of learning that they want. And so I say all the time, don't tell me you want to get promoted, show me. And if they don't want to, we need people to come in and do the work. So just that's totally fine.
Thank you. Anyone else? There's another one. How would you adapt this process to SME to a plumbing company?
Well, so think about this. If you sat with a plumbing company and you had the people who were your plumbers going out or your technicians going out and had them make a list of the common conflicts they have with customers or vendors for a month and the common technical problems that keep coming up, what you start to find, people know that you're listening. One of the things that happens in the subject matter expert model is as an employee, very often we bring stuff up and nothing happens. Like nobody listens. And so if you want to say we need to become technically better at hot water heat because we feel like we want to be an expert in hot water heat, that will give us a brand new market to go to. That would be fine. In a plumbing area though, I will tell you, having just had my bathroom redone, the idea of how to have them talk with customers, analytical problem solving, active listening, positive communication, conflict resolution. Your plumbers are already great technicians. If they truly want to grow, they probably want to grow in the things that cause them pain on a daily basis. And my guess is that's not technical skills. People are forever who are in the trades. They just want to, they just don't want to do the work, but they're the face of the organization at the mad customer. And so again, teaching them win-win bargaining, conflict resolution, active listening might be the place to start. I love the questions. Thank you.
So how would you approach recruitment / retention when thinking about employee intrinsic values outside the company? What interactions can happen between local governments, chambers, etc.?
So I'm gonna start answering it, and if I'm not answering the question, please let me know. All right. So what I think I hear you saying is how can we take this process of creating a persona and do actively recruiting, and how can we make it part of organizations that are state organizations that have certain guidelines or certain ways of doing things. And by the way, now would be a good time to tell me if I'm not on track, but I'm going to go on down this path just in case I am. Looks like somebody has chimed in.
Says no, but I'm not sure. So if someone wants to unmute and speak, that sometimes clarifies. So Martin,
and the other thing,
Nathan,
this is a really good opportunity to say, just call me. I mean, Nathan's got my email, he's got my phone number, and this is a genuine offer. I am so grateful for Great Falls, the faith that they have in my work and the belief to put in front of all of you. And so my one hand washes the other is a genuine offer for you to just call or email me with questions so I can give an in-depth answer to it.
Yeah, my question was more around for company or institutions, especially in a rural area, how do you attract talent, with just other than what your company has to offer, as far as really building that placemaking type environment where they want to live?
Yeah, so the first thing I want you to do is before you do anything else with recruitment, start with the internal recruitment stuff. Like again, the easiest clouds to seed are the people in your organization who already love your organization. They're friends with people who live in the area. We make the assumption when people don't apply for their job that everybody saw our job ad and that nobody applied. So that means nobody wants our job. And I'm here to tell you, over 20 years, nothing could be further from the truth. Just because somebody doesn't apply doesn't mean they saw your job ad and made a value decision about your organization. So in your particular case, don't worry about bringing new people into the environment. Now, I help companies do that as well. We do that recruiting for several economic development organizations to create advertising to get people to move there. But for companies specifically, so I'm hoping that you'd be open to have that conversation with me by phone or email, outside of this call. But if you don't know where to start here with recruiting, you have great people who love your organization, who have friends that all they have to do is refer great people in your organization to get a week off with pay. It's not reasonable that they would not get involved with that. So I hope that's a short answer to about a third of your question and an offer to do it offline.
So other question, would you shift this timeline if your employees are engaged in a 4-year apprenticeship program? I use this not with apprentices, but with journeymen, which may mean offering them SME at 7 years of employment. Yeah,
so that's a really good example of how to adjust this. What I would do though is if they're we want to keep people who are engaged, and if they're in an apprenticeship program, they're engaged. This may not be especially from a technical standpoint, this may not be a fit for your organization, but I guarantee you that those same people are having arguments at home because of they don't know active listening, or they don't have conflict resolution, or with customers or with their instructors during the apprenticeship program. I mean, one advantage of being the career services manager for the largest technical college in the state of Wisconsin for a decade is I got to work with a ton of those people. And what we know for sure is the technical stuff, they'll kind of take care of themselves. They're in an apprenticeship program, they're at a technical college, or they're learning from somebody who's already carries a card. But it's those, they just really find it difficult to things that are people focused outside of the work. And so offer it at 3 years for the soft skill parts. If they don't want to take it, it doesn't mean they're not a leader going forward, because they're already becoming a subject matter expert in their topic because you have them in an apprenticeship. So I understand your question.
Great. We're at the top of the hour, so I don't want to keep people beyond. This has been incredible. Chris, thank you for the wonderful information, knowledge. And as Chris says, if you want to talk more with him, reach out to me. I am happy to pass his information along. And thank you very much.
Yeah, guys, thank you very much for your time. And when things get normal, I'll head out west, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to meet in person and maybe do some of this stuff in person. So thank you very much. Feel free to reach out. It's a genuine offer. And Nathan, thank you very much for your whole organization's faith and belief in my work. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure.